From secretly Force-sensitive droids, to disillusioned stormtroopers who ultimately defected to the side of the heroes long before a certain FN2187. I am Gareth, this is What Culture Star Wars, and here are 10 background Star Wars characters with ridiculously convoluted backstories. Number 10, R5-D4. While he would go on to appear in more of a supporting capacity during The Mandalorian's third season, helping Din Djarin and pals on Mandalore, when it comes to the original Star Wars trilogy, the astromech known as R5-D4 was little more than an additional background droid. Before he suddenly blew up not long after being acquired by Luke Skywalker and Uncle Owen, and it became clear he had a bad motivator though, R5's life had certainly been an interesting one, both in canon and non-canon. In the former version of his backstory, R5 worked alongside the Rebel Alliance for a spell, before he eventually ended up with the Jawas and having his mind wiped 4 years before the events of Episode 4 A New Hope. Then, when R2-D2 and C-3PO popped up on the same sandcrawler he was travelling on, R2 attempted to sabotage his fellow astromech as a way of ensuring he was the astromech sold next, before explaining how the fate of the galaxy depended on him getting off the vehicle. Sure enough, those beeps eventually struck a chord with R5, leading to him purposely sabotaging himself so R2 would be taken by Luke and Owen. The non-canon backstory? Well, it involves R5, aka Skippy in the Skippy the Jedi Droid comic story, being revealed as a Force-sensitive droid, experiencing a shocking Force vision that shows what would happen if he was purchased and not R2, and again blowing his own head up on purpose to make sure R2 completed his mission. What a background hero! Who is your favourite droid in this galaxy far, far away? You let me know in the comment section down below. I think R5's the best. I'm a big fan of R5. Number 9, Darth Fel. Remember that stormtrooper seen roaming the Tatooine desert looking for a pair of droids in Episode 4 A New Hope? Well, this bloke actually went by the name of Darth Fel, and had quite the ridiculously intriguing backstory. It was actually revealed in Legends continuity that this Imperial soldier discovered something rather important back when he was driving an AT-AT Walker during a combat simulation. Fel, an elite trooper, realized that these massive machines were vulnerable to enemy ships potentially using cables to trip them over, and felt the best way to avoid that embarrassing and rather catastrophic scenario would be to move the AT-AT into a kneeling position. Ingenious. How was he rewarded for such a brilliant discovery? In an attempt to stupidly keep said weakness a secret, Fel was assigned to the Stormtrooper Corps by Colonel Maximilian Viz, before eventually being sent off to Tatooine. That all led to Fel uttering his "Look sir, droids" line while searching the Dune Sea, with Fel eventually growing disillusioned with the Empire, killing his commanding officer, and becoming a spy for the rebellion, seemingly even offering them the secret to taking down the AT-ATs too. So there you have it, long before Finn decided to join the good fight in the sequel trilogy, another stormtrooper was actually doing something similar in the Legends continuity. Number 8, Zukus. Back when Darth Vader was trying to find Luke Skywalker and his mates during Episode 5 The Empire Strikes Back, the world was introduced to some of the galaxy's most formidable bounty hunters. Among them was the iconic Boba Fett, of course, but as you'll see again in this list later on, there were also a number of other fascinating background guns for hire that you never realised possessed some properly unexpected backstories. Take Zukus for example. The insectoid Gan Findsman seen watching on as the Chosen One tells the crew there will be a substantial reward for the one who finds the Millennium Falcon. Far from being just a goofy-looking hunter, Zukus was actually Force-sensitive too. Known as the Uncanny One, the Gan being was known for his brilliant tracking abilities, referred to himself in the third person, and could often be found working alongside his droid pal 4LOM. Hell, there was even a time there in Legends continuity when Zukus, who was also diagnosed with schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder, and 4LOM decided to join forces with the Rebel Alliance in between Episode 5 and 6, with the two bounty hunters attempting to intercept Han Solo as he was being transported to Jabba's palace. Put simply, this background Gand had a lot going on. Number 7, Aura Singh. Aura Singh first briefly appeared in the galaxy far, far away during the Boonta Eve pod race in Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, And from that little glimpse at the pale alien being, it was safe to assume the gun-boasting figure was a bounty hunter of sorts. But Singh was actually so much more than that. You see, before turning to a life of capturing and killing for money, Singh was born on the planet Nar Shaddaa, with the Pali Duvan never knowing her father and having a spice-addicted mother. Her Force sensitivity eventually led to her becoming a part of the Jedi Order, however, only for Singh to then walk away from it all to become a bounty hunter instead. Before showing up in The Phantom Menace, the top-class sniper would work alongside the likes of Jango Fett and Cad Bane too, and even interacted with Darth Maul before he was infamously sliced in two by Obi-Wan Kenobi. In the time post-Episode 1, she'd also act as a questionable mentor to Boba Fett as the son of Jango attempted to get revenge on Mace Windu during the Clone Wars for killing his pops. That's a hell of a history for a character with a grand total of 2 seconds of Skywalker Saga screen time. Number 6, Bazine Netal. As Han Solo, Chewbacca, and sequel trilogy newcomers Rey and Finn sit down for a chat with Maz Kanata in her castle bar in Episode 7, The Force Awakens, you'll no doubt remember seeing a gigantic alien creature chilling on a couch with a slickly dressed human. Said person, pretending to be the aforementioned Grumgar's girlfriend, would eventually inform the First Order that the little astromech they were looking for, BB-8, had just rolled into the establishment, and she went by the name of Bazine Netal. Along with being the individual responsible for bringing the First Order to Takodana, Netal actually has a quite compelling backstory too. Growing up as an orphan on Shak Teal, the human kept her real name a secret, and was trained in martial arts by a pirate called Delpha Cloda, after he took her from an orphanage. In the years that followed, this human, nicknamed Shark Rabbit by Cloda, was then set on fire by one of the pirates' rivals after being sent to steal an item from them, scarring the left side of her head, and would eventually take on the name of Bazine Netal. In the end, the Master of Disguise and eventual bounty hunter murdered her former mentor Cloda during a mission to retrieve a valuable steel case, before ultimately becoming a spy for the First Order. Cheers for watching this video today, folks. Hit that subscribe button down below for more What Culture Star Wars in your corner of the galaxy. Number 5, the Salac. You know that horrifying creature seen swallowing Boba Fett and almost munching on Luke Skywalker and the gang during Episode 6, Return of the Jedi? Wait till you hear the ridiculous way it actually ended up there. Before growing into the terrifying creature Jabba the Hutt enjoys throwing folks into, Sarlaccs remarkably start out as spores. That's right, these beaked monsters aren't that different from mushrooms, depending on which xenobiologist you speak to, with millions of these particular spores being released when a male Sarlacc reached the same size as a female, after parasitically eating her and exploded. Sci-fi nature is wonderful, isn't it? It takes 30,000 years for a Sarlacc to reach full size, with it then burrowing down into the ground of whatever planet it was on, Tatooine in this case, and eventually chowing down on the poor souls who fall into their mouths from there on out. In short, the Episode 6 Sarlacc had lived a seriously interesting life before its big screen debut. Number 4, IG-88. While another IG unit by the name of IG-11 has since gone on to become that little more well-known and adored in the wake of its heroic displays in The Mandalorian, no one will ever forget the first ever version of this droid to appear in the background in this galaxy far, far away. Jumping back to that moment Darth Vader spoke to the bounty hunters he wanted to track down the Millennium Falcon in Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, a rather cold-looking IG-88 could be seen listening to the assignment too. And the next time viewers saw this particular killer droid, he was looking very much lifeless in a junk room on Bespin. Yeah, that's the droid right there. But the story of how IG-88 got to that point is a wild one. Created by Holowan Laboratories in the wake of the Clone Wars as one of 5 identical assassin droids, IG-88 swiftly went rogue and murdered all in the lab, before eventually using his desire to kill organics as a way to earn credits. Smart bot. Oh, and those 5 IG units also had a grand plan to take down all living beings in the galaxy. Because why not? Over the years, IG-88B, as he was also known, would also team with pirates like Hondo Anaka, and cross paths with everyone from Solo: A Star Wars Story's Kira to Rebels' Sabine Wren. And even after being destroyed by Boba Fett during his aforementioned attempts to capture Han Solo and the gang, IG-88 was eventually rebuilt and still around during the time of the sequel trilogy. You just can't keep a murderous background droid down, can you? Number 3, Lobot. Sticking with Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back's mysterious background faces, our heroes would eventually encounter a part machine human known as Lobot during their trip to Bespin's Cloud City. Frequently found by the side of Lando Calrissian, this figure quickly stood out from the rest thanks to his strange mechanical headband, aka an AJ-6 cyborg construct. A piece of tech which helped Lobot run battlefield calculations when he once worked for the Empire. He'd obviously end up joining forces with the iconic smuggler Lando down the line though, with Lobot then sadly losing his mind after being gravely wounded during one particular job. His implants would take over from that point, and Lobot would eventually use that headgear to stay connected to Cloud City's central network. He also assisted Calrissian in helping himself and his friends escape the planet in Episode 5. But in Legends continuity, Lobot was also the son of a slaver, who actually witnessed his father be killed by pirates at the age of just 15. Yep, that's gonna do a number on you. He'd then go on to be said pirate's slave for a further 2 years, before getting away from the clan and arriving on Bespin. From there, he was arrested for stealing and sentenced to 15 years of involuntary service, with that sentence also requiring him to be fitted with that famous headgear. But it all worked out for the best. He learned to love his job as the first cyborg computer liaison officer in Cloud City history. In both canon and Legends though, one thing is definitely clear. Lobot went through an awful lot. Number 2, Cornelius Everan. When it comes to background characters in this galaxy far, far away, they don't come much creepier than the wanted, grumpy human Luke Skywalker bumped into on Mos Eisley during Episode 4, A New Hope. That pal of Ponda Baba went by the name of Dr. Cornelius Everan, and a quick look at his unsettling backstory reveals that he wasn't half a piece of work. Once a surgeon with all the potential in the galaxy, Everan ultimately decided to get a little experimental with his work. That's one way of putting it. After going mad, the doctor began rearranging the limbs of the victims he was working on, leaving them horribly scarred. But karma bit the surgeon on the ass in the end, with Everan himself getting horrifically scarred when a bounty hunter tried to take him out. Then, whilst working with the Crimson Dawn Syndicate, this horrendous person would become Solo, a Star Wars Stories Dryden Voss's personal doctor, before also creating the disturbing Decraniated. Victims turned into cyber slaves before being sold against their will. All that before he even turned up in the cantina all those years ago. Yeesh. Number 1, Bomar Monks. As C-3PO and R2-D2 make their way into Jabba the Hutt's palace on Tatooine in Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, you'll probably just about remember seeing a strange spider-like being crawling across the ground behind the protocol droid. What you probably didn't realize is that what you were looking at here wasn't simply an old droid or a random alien monster, it was actually a Bomar Monk. These members of the Bomar Order were so keen to get the most out of the power of their minds, they actually chose to separate themselves from any and all physical sensations. And how did they go about doing this? Well, by dumping their brains into a nutrient-filled bowl that would then be carried around by these creepy droid walkers. Their monastery on Tatooine was actually none other than Jabba's palace, with the Hutt taking control of the location and just letting the weird spider monks wander about the place because he loved how gruesome they looked. What a slug, eh? They'd also pop up again in the Book of Boba Fett eventually, scurrying around the desert and no doubt sending even more chills up your spine. Now you know their ridiculous and somewhat disturbing backstory.